Hi, it's Chinasa here, and this is Fleabag and Sisterhood. This is a love story in more ways than one. Okay, so you know the TikTok videos to Scott Street that are like a slideshow, and it's just slide after slide of Sisterhood quotes, and trust me, I have some here, of course I do. Um, I was going down a rabbit hole of those, and simultaneously watching Fleabag when I noticed something, like actually really noticed something. Uh, my first time watching Fleabag, I think for many people, as well as myself, we understand that there is a very beautiful, thought provoking dynamic that plays out with Fleabag and Claire. Um, but I think this connection is often overshadowed um, by the priest and Fleabag's relationship, which I think a lot of people focus on, and for good reason, because it is a beautiful relationship that they have in season two, right? But I do think that there needs to be more attention paid to Fleabag and Claire because the arc of their sisterhood, I think, is like very beautiful. So, I mean, I think it's evident that Fleabag and Claire have a complicated relationship, especially because we get to see that Fleabag sort of views her sister from this aggressively perfect lens, even though Fleabag is can be unserious about it. There is still a lot of truth to it. Like when she describes her sister as like, "Oh, this is my perfect anorexic sister." Like she's being a little tongue in cheek, but she's also being a little serious, you know? I think both Claire and Fleabag are actually envious of the way that the other expresses themselves, right? And I think by the end of the series, we get to see this really lovely completion of their arcs where both of them are expressing themselves a little bit like how the other expresses themselves. And that is how they each find what they've been looking for throughout the course of the series. And for Fleabag, that's love. And for Claire, that's freedom, right? Their bond and the way that they view each other is what actually ends up helping them the most in the end. So, as we transition into our starting questions, I think it's really important to ask ourselves, what is in a name, right? We need to understand why the priest is not named, right? But Boo is and Claire is. I think these are all really interesting questions. So, who gets a name and who doesn't? And for the priest, we're going to examine the nature of the relationship between Fleabag and the priest, then the nature of the relationship between Boo and Fleabag, and then the nature of the relationship between Claire and Fleabag, and how it differentiates itself from other relationships in Fleabag's life. So I think in order to really understand the relationship between Fleabag and the priest, we really have to talk about the fourth wall breaks, right? And I know there's been like a million videos on Fleabag and the priest and what the fourth wall could represent. And I know that a lot of people say that it represents God and that the priest knows what it is to call out to a higher power, which is God. And Fleabag is also seeking out this higher power, right? And I agree with that in part, but I really think it centers on love, right? Because even the priest talks about his love for God, and that is what stops him from fully loving Fleabag, is his love for God. And so I think it's less about God himself and more about love in itself, right? The priest knows what it is to look for love in the way that Fleabag looks for love from the audience, right? That is, to me, the central aspect of him being able to see into her fourth wall breaks. Um, I think one of the common misconceptions I see is that the reason why the priest can see into Fleabag's fourth wall is because he understands her more deeply than Claire does or anyone else does. And I just think that that rings false, right? Fleabag knows what it is to search for someone to receive this love that she has inside of her. The priest knows that as well. Claire, that is not her arc, right? She's not searching for love. That's not the question inside of her. The question inside of Claire is freedom. And I think to even better understand Fleabag's position, it's necessary to investigate Boo. What I think is interesting is that aside from the fact that fourth wall breaks would be strange in flashbacks because fourth wall breaks sort of suggest a presentness of the scene, is that when we see her with Boo, there are no fourth wall breaks, right? Like there is no hint that she is at all disconnected from what she from her interactions with Boo, right? When she is with Boo, she is with Boo, right? So we can tell that the audience, right, these fourth wall breaks serve as a proxy for something that she needs now that she doesn't have with Boo, right? Because she didn't always need us. This is a new occurrence, right? Boo was the recipient of her love when she was alive, just like how her mother was, which is why this moment of I'll take it is so beautiful, because Fleabag really takes that to heart. She really does give Boo the love that she once gave to her mom. So when Fleabag does what she did to Boo, it serves as a betrayal, right? Not only of Boo, but of the love that she gave Boo, and by extension, the love that she had for her mother, right? Which I think does encapsulate her hypersexualization, right? When she gives that speech at the end of season 1, where she's kind of talking about how she doesn't know what to do, like with her body. She wants to be loved. She doesn't know what's going to happen to her once she can no longer have sex, as an expression of this turmoil inside of her, which is a manifestation of all of the feelings she has about the betrayal that she has executed. The betrayal of Boo, the betrayal of her mother. And so this entire series serves as like a quest for her love, right? A quest to answer these like teeming questions inside of her about if she can love, if she can be loved, right? And the entire series is an answer to that question. So now I think it would be good to transition into Claire's name, and how I think it's hilarious that the priest is not named, but Claire's entire family unit is. In terms of Claire's naming, I just think it's so interesting. I really want to reemphasize the point that the priest doesn't have a name, but Claire's entire family unit is named. Like, even her stepson, who is like admittedly by Fleabag and basically everyone on the show, that he's like really a strange kid, he's named. The priest isn't named though. Her, like, who everyone feels is like her like amazing love interest, is not named, but the weird creepy stepson is. Okay. Like, Claire is so important and like central to this story. Okay, I think it's also important to examine the ways in which Fleabag and Claire miscommunicate slash like don't understand each other, right? And I think an interesting example of one of these misunderstandings is when Fleabag and Claire are at the cemetery, and Fleabag, has brought Claire this like cake, and Fleabag breaks the fourth wall and is like, she won't eat it. And then Claire does. I just think that that's such an interesting moment of like clear of us as the audience being reminded that Fleabag might not be the most reliable narrator when it comes to Claire, right? She's herself surprised that Claire's eating it, but Claire can be unexpected. And we're going to watch that clip now.
Now they're just sort of fighting their way out.
I haven't farted in about 3 years.
Happy birthday. She won't eat it.
Thanks. So,
I mean, this moment is so special because I think it's one of those times where we as the audience get to see that, like, Fleabag might not be the most reliable narrator in terms of Claire, right? She might not know Claire as much as she thinks she does, and the ways that she thinks about Claire may very well be informed by her own biases of Claire and her own biases of herself. Now, I do think that Claire's phases was brushed over way too quickly, but for someone who's been represented to us as the audience as someone who's like very rigid, very controlled, like we see Claire through these phases as someone who is yearning to be something other than that. Like, she wants to be fun, she wants to be new, she wants to be like Fleabag and by extension like her mother. She wants that very badly, and I just don't see this examined very much, right? she is not as controlled, as uptight as we're led to believe. And I think it does bother her, like the ease that Fleabag has to just be so quirky and fun when Claire has so much difficulty with it. And I think that this can definitely be a source of jealousy for Claire, which we'll see in the next clip, which occurred after the awards show in season 2.
Interesting. I knew I shouldn't have brought you here.
What do you mean interesting?
You just think you can do whatever you like. Say whatever you like, steal whatever you like, kiss whoever you like.
He kissed me.
Oh, I know.
You know? Then why have we been spending...
Because you're fine. You'll always be fine. You'll always be interesting with your quirky cafe and your dead best friend. You just make me feel like I failed.
And I think it's important to recognize that Claire really feels like she cannot be free, right? During this episode, she makes an unfortunate joke with the other Claire. It's just an unfortunate joke all around. And, you know, it's awkward. It's strange, right? But Fleabag farted in the elevator. And what did the woman say who walked into the elevator? She said, "Oh, that smells amazing. What is that?" Like, how frustrating must it really be for Claire to see the way that Fleabag moves through the world, and she feels like she moves through it with such ease. We as the audience know that's not true, but Claire doesn't. I mean, and it must be so frustrating to see how much Fleabag is like their mother. And Fleabag isn't the only one who lost a mother, right? Claire lost her too. And so Claire has a certain amount of indignation towards Fleabag because of this. And I think that that is understandable. I think Claire is also envious of the way that Fleabag seems to not really need anyone, but Claire needs Martin, and I think she really does not like that, right? She knows that Martin is the one who kissed Fleabag, but she still needs him. And we're gonna look at the finale for season 1, that moment where she says, "After what you did to Boo," to look at this a little bit further.
What? But that's just not true. No, fuck you. Claire,
Please don't.
no, Claire, he
Please?
came out into the garden.
I don't want to
and then
hear it.
Claire, you have to believe me.
How can I believe you?
Because I'm your sister.
After what you did to Boo?
This moment is still so poignant, and it was so honestly hard to record this because it's just such a striking, chilling moment. And I think there's really something interesting in the fact that she does not want us to know, right? She does not want us to know that she's done such an awful thing to Boo, right? Because the same love that she had given her mother, that was given to Boo after her mother died, has now been given to us, right? And it's this knowledge that we're receiving this love that's been essentially trampled on, right? It's really the root of all of her anxieties, that she will never be loved. She will never be able to give good love. And ultimately, right, this betrayal of Boo was a betrayal of her mother. And obviously now it's a betrayal of us. And this is the moment that leads us into season 2. Obviously, there are different scenes between this one and season 2, but the subsequent breakdown after this confrontation is what leads us into this is a love story and everything that encapsulates. So we're definitely going to look at that scene from season 2, episode 1 next.
Thank you. This is a love story.
So, but this is a love story overarching message of Fleabag, I think, is not only about the individual love stories that exist in the story, right, between Fleabag and Claire, and Fleabag and the priest, Fleabag and Boo, Fleabag and her mother. I think it's also about, where to put your love, how to put your love, how to execute it, how to show it, how to give it. And I think it's also this clear message of it's messy. This is not clean cut. It's not easy. It's not super controlled. It's going to be messy, which is why I think it's so great and on the nose that she's saying this as she's cleaning up blood from her face. The blood on her face, which is really only there because of the love she has for Claire, even after a year of not speaking to each other. And when we get to the end of season 2, where Claire says that she'd run through an airport for Fleabag, I think it's also really important to examine this moment because Fleabag needs to hear this from Claire. This is a necessary moment, and we're going to see that now.
I'm just the airport. How would I even find him?
Can't get through security without a boarding pass.
No, I wasn't suggesting
I have to
that
buy
you
a dummy ticket just to get through the gate. I don't know when his flight is or which terminal. Imagine if I knew that. Imagine him finding out I knew all that. Imagine if he was just in Boots buying a pair of tweezers in Terminal 5 and suddenly I was there. Hello, Claire.
Yeah, okay, that would be intense.
The only person I'd run for an airport for is you.
So what I find fascinating about this scene is that the timing of this scene and the after what you did to Boo moment in season 1 come at around the same place in both seasons' finales. And I think that they're both turning points for Fleabag, right? I think in the first season, there was this just absolute shock from Fleabag that Claire would bring it up in a moment like this. And this feeling of betrayal for her on her part, and also a feeling of betrayal for us as the audience, right? And it almost feels like her sister doesn't believe her, doesn't love her. And it's heartbreaking for her, right? But in this second season, the way that Claire phrases this is just kind of such a, almost a throwaway line, like, the only person to run through an airport for is you. And we see Fleabag's shock, right? I think in a faraway part of Fleabag, she knows that Claire loves her, but she needs this. She needs to hear it from Claire. She would not have thought that on her own. And it's really because of this moment, in part, that Fleabag is able to leave us, the audience, behind. And so we see this really lovely mirroring between Fleabag and Claire as each of the romantic relationships in their life end. So first we're going to see Claire leaving Martin, and then we're going to see Fleabag and the priest breaking up.
So, I am not going to leave you until you are down on your knees, begging me.
Please leave me.
It is their understanding of one another and their love for each other that allows the other to be who they need to be in the final moments that we see them, right? Claire needs to be a little bit like Fleabag, right? She gets messy. In order to break up with Martin, she has to get messy. And Martin himself admits that he did not expect her to do that. He did not expect her to get down on the floor and do that because she isn't like that. She's not a messy person, right? She needs to be a little bit like Fleabag. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge herself says that Fleabag's name was chosen because it sounds a little bit messy, right? And Fleabag, this breakup that she has with the priest is clean cut, honestly. It's pretty straightforward. It's more clean cut and more straightforward than we ever have seen her before. And that's what she needs to be in this moment. And so they each need to be a little bit like the other in order to get this done. So in this next moment that we're going to see where she's leaving us and she says goodbye to us, it's because she's completed her arc, right? What she needed to do was to, first of all, know that she can be loved. And this is shown to her through the priest and through Claire. Most principally, Claire, right? To me, this goodbye with the priest is not the proof of this love. It is a test, right? It's a test for Fleabag to see if she has learned throughout this entire series. And she has.
I just kept dreaming. It wasn't very hard.
leaving Martin and Fleabag and the priest breaking up serve as fulfillment of each of their arcs. We've been following Fleabag because she is searching for love. She doesn't know where to put this love that she has inside of her. That is why we're here, right? But when Claire says, "You are the only person I would run through an airport for," it is an assertion of her love for Fleabag in a way that Fleabag can finally receive it and understand it. Claire is the completion of Fleabag's arc. And when Claire is able to finally leave Martin, she knows she doesn't need him as a crutch anymore. That she can be free and things will not fall apart. That she can be free and it can be good for her. And that things will work out for her. Fleabag can be loved and Claire can be free. I mean, these are ideas that they were not entertaining at the beginning of the show. And so when we talk about Fleabag being a love story, I see this as a love story between Fleabag and Claire, Fleabag and her mother, Fleabag and Fleabag herself, right? This show is perfect. Perfect show. Okay, that is the end of Fleabag and Sisterhood. This is a love story in more ways than one. You can follow me on TikTok, Pinterest, and Instagram at CH1N4SA. I always have the same profile picture that you will see to your right. You can subscribe to my Substack, Musings from Saturn, at ch1n4sa.substack.com. I will be releasing an in-depth essay on Claire and generational trauma on January 6, 2023. So if you're watching this video after January 6, 2023, you can go ahead and give it a look if you so desire. These are my social media pages just to show you what they look like. And yes, thank you so much for watching. I'll definitely be posting more video essays soon. So go ahead and subscribe and like and share. Thank you again.